one example is like this Black Mirror kind of like series. That's the metaphor against the bright sun, which is like the techno optimistic or techno progressive kind of view of the world. And okay, so usually these like tech entrepreneurs, or they call them tech bros, while these are often actually let's say coming from Middle East or from Nigeria or from India, you know, they go to the US and usually they're immigrants, and they are like just like meritocratic smart people. And these old elites, usually, let's say typically they're from New York or Washington. They often like inherited their wealth, like for example like Salzburgers, they inherited the family, passed down through 6 generations, like the newspapers. And the newspaper is like quoted on a stock exchange. I mean, it's a company, they inherited it, but they control a lot of this like narrative, because they're quite like still kind of considered as a prestigious media.
Hello, welcome back to Mtambo's Desk, a weekly podcast covering deep conversations on technology, philosophy, complex science, and cryptocurrency. My name is Jakub Mtambo, and the following is a conversation with Jakub Simek, a co-founder of DAO and an author of Wisdom Enterprising. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Jakub Simek about his article on Bright Sun versus Black Mirror and our daily Balajisms series. And now, dear friends, here is Jakub Simek. Well, Jakub, based on your recent article on the Bright Sun versus Black Mirror, how do the Bright Sun and Black Mirror visions of the future relate to the concept of longevity and practical miracles?
Okay, yeah, so Bright Sun is just a metaphor by Balaji Srinivasan that is like opposed to this like dystopian vision of the sci-fi vision of dystopian future represented by series like Black Mirror. Okay, it's like a British series, but it's Balaji uses it as an example of a narrative that is pushed by the old US establishment that was disrupted by technology. News media, like mainstream media that now Balaji calls downstream media, their revenue dropped like from 70 billion to like 17 billion in a couple of years back in 2000, 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that, like around 2010, let's say. I don't remember the exact year now, but it was like quite sudden. It was like when the Google News arrived, it kind of disturbed and destroyed the regional monopolies of those newspapers. So, for example, it was enough to reprint just like Reuters stories if you had like a regional monopoly, let's say like Chicago Tribune, or some small city, small town newspapers. But suddenly all the newspapers were searchable and comparable on Google News. And this vaporized their geographical monopolies or regional monopolies, oligopolies, and put them in a neck to neck like competition, like fierce global competition. And what happened, what Balaji explains, that there sadly, or like Silicon Valley and let's say Washington or New York are like thousands of miles apart. And so what didn't happen was, like, let's say if you had like a couple, like one spouse is a journalist and another spouse is a like entrepreneur, like tech entrepreneur, then they would they would be like diversified, meaning like, okay, so the journalist got disrupted by technology, and let's say her or his job security is kind of diminished, and he or she they need to work either longer, harder, and like for less pay, and they had to produce like more and more articles that now resemble clickbait, and it's just more like just basically just hit pieces instead of like some longer, well thought pieces, and it's like a return to yellow journalism, what as was before, like more kind of like tabloid clickbait journalism instead of some neutral journalism. So this is what happened on the side of media and old establishment. And then they kind of perceived technology and the tech bros as kind of enemies, but also since they got disrupted by technology, they saw it as a threat, you know, and they kind of paint the picture of today as like idyllic picture of like this is a amazing present moment, amazing present times, but some tech bro invented some, let's say, some gadget or some device, and he destroyed our future for everyone. So it's like this kind of dystopian sci-fi movies. And in the West, there are actually quite only like a few movies that are that have different narrative, that are more kind of like utopian or protopian. One of them is Limitless. So like there is a Limitless movie and Limitless series, and it's about like some kind of nootropic like that makes you like, I don't know, 10 times smarter or something. And it has some side effects, but like spoiler alert, but then at the end it's like possible, like the main character is he is possible he manages to like engineer out those side effects. And I recommend the series. Yeah, I saw the movie twice, I think, and the series are also quite nice. So it's called Limitless. And there are similar, I think, Super 30 is also what I quote in the article. It's like another, like an Indian movie. I haven't seen it, but it's like a movie about like that kind of glorifies the engineers, like and it inspires like kids and young people to become engineers or something. And it's quite different than the Black Mirror series. I mean, I saw some of those like episodes from Black Mirror series, but it's quite dark, and it's like yeah, the spirit is just different.
Mhm. Okay. So, and what are the key, maybe what are the key difference between Balaji's vision of ascending world and a declining world?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just going back to your practical exam, practical miracles, like from so okay, longevity and practical miracles. So basically, if you want to unlock technical progress in longevity, meaning like the extension of lifespan and most importantly, extension of health span. So like healthy years that we have on this planet. So to unlock this progress, we need to first create, like, let's say Balaji talks about, like maybe we need thousands of movies like Limitless, you know, just like because media are upstream of regulators. And actually, regulators and media are often upstream of politicians, you know, because like if you have like a minister of, let's say, health or something, he or she isn't actually like like a CEO, you know, controlling the ministry. Like he or she can't be fired. I mean, she can't fire the like just some regular bureaucrats that easily, because I mean they have some long-term contracts, they have some like they're unionized, they have some protections, and it's quite actually stressful for her or and also for those bureaucrats to actually mess up the system. So okay, some people call like talk about like deep state or something, but the idea is basically that it's kind of a simple idea is that you have a certain class, like a professional managerial class, that it's that has its values and its kind of core d'esprit and kind of behaviors. And usually those people I mean they think of themselves like they're better than politicians. Like, you know, politicians are for them like kind of actors, you know, and you can imagine these people like advisors to those politicians. So basically it's not that easy to to change, let's say, some regulation around healthcare. Let's say you want to maybe make those regulators into smarter regulators, like I don't know, maybe take some some inspiration from countries like Kenya, India, or Singapore around like how they manage their healthcare and insurance systems. But it's, if you want to do it, it's basically you can't just like let's say vote in some kind of smart politician, because they will basically not act as a CEO, and they might actually not change the system. It's not that easy because of this like these bureaucrats from various agencies, they're not that easy to change, or to reform, or something like that. So what you need is you need like lots of like movies that depict actually where the real problem is. Like the real problem usually is in not smart regulation. So it could be excessive regulation, or it could be like not enough regulation, but it's not smart, meaning like there is like high false positive and false negative rates. So like either some things that are dangerous go through, like for example in the US you have this opioids crisis. So, like a lot of people got addicted to some like painkiller medicines based on opioids. And then let's say you have some other medicines that could help, I don't know, cure some diseases, but they take like 10 years to get approved, and all the time, like from the invention of the medicine to the approval, like thousands or hundreds of thousands of people could be cured, and this time it takes too long, So and longevity is something like a crypto medicine in a way that also Balaji explains it. It's in a way it kind of inverts the premises of the fiat medicine, similarly to how crypto inverts the premises of fiat systems. That yeah, so it's kind of like longevity, something like longevity and fitness. It's kind of like like a new way how to look at health. So that's just like one example of that. If we had like smart regulators, something like, let's say you have Uber and you have Lyft and you have some other companies like that, and they are like they have their marketplaces, and they kick back bad actors out, and they provide rating like 1 to from 5 to 0 stars rating, And so if you have like 0 stars, means like it's usually you are like a bad actor so they try to kick out or prevent the bad actors to access the marketplace, and then they rate the quality of those providers, let's say taxi drivers. And so sometimes if you have like 1 star, it means like maybe your services are a bit poor, and you need to like improve them. But it doesn't mean that you are a bad actor. But if you get 0, then you are like kicked out because you are kind of like maybe cheating customers or something like that. And so what you want, what Balaji also talks about is like you would want to have like a competition between smart regulators. So you don't want to have just like one, let's say, taxi company in the city or in the town, but you would like to have like more. That's just like a metaphor. You would like to have like a competition between various companies and various smart regulators. But in order to like promote this kind of thinking or ideas and systems, you would need to have like let's say thousands of movies or hundreds of movies, like limitless, to actually show like what is the potential, let's say, of nootropics or of longevity or of like various other technologies, and maybe to also depict regulators or bureaucrats in a different light than usually they are depicted. So there are only a couple of movies where they are depicted as people who are hindering technological progress or progress in health. For example, Dallas Buyers Club is like one of such rare movies, or even Ghostbusters are they're like depicting regulators as the bad guys or something. So
talking about technological progress, how does the internet or how has the internet and technology impacted the traditional division of countries into developed and developing?
Okay, so going back to the ascending and descending world. Okay, so this is this basically something similar to Taleb. He also sees inequality as dynamic, meaning actually, that you can you can have people or classes of people or countries that are on the rise, and maybe people feel or they're like low income currently, but they see themselves their lives being improved by technology. Like they had like mobile phones, and then now they have smartphones, and they perceive technology quite differently, let's say, than the journalists that were disrupted, the Western journalists that were disrupted by technology, and their jobs were made less secure, or their newspapers went bankrupt. So like the ascending world or the ascending class. So Balaji talks not about developed and developing countries, but about ascending world and descending, declining world. And what does it mean? It's basically you can have like some parts of the West, or like some cities in the West, like San Francisco, are like clearly part of the declining world because there are like high levels of crime and let's say homelessness, and this is like a problem that is getting worse. And the talented people like tech entrepreneurs are fleeing, let's say, to Miami or to Austin, to other places. And in Europe you can have similar like areas. And similarly, like in the so-called ascending world, as Balaji talks about it, it's just basically, okay, these countries might be like low income or medium income, mid-income countries, or something like that, but they are clearly on the rise, and they can ship various technological infrastructure products, like projects. Something like M-Pesa in Kenya. Kenya was like 15 years ahead of Western countries in mobile banking, and Kenya invented mobile banking. Or India with various like technological like infrastructural projects like Reliance Jio, like 5G internet or 4G internet, like in rural areas. Then like India stack, like ID stack, like you can pay like with your basically, I think, with your fingerprint in India, or you can like almost buy anything or something just like with your fingerprint everywhere. And so it's like usually like many of, or China, let's say China, like managing to build like 38,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, and the second country after China is like Spain with 2,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. So, and they managed to build it in 15 years. And yeah, they had like 15 years ago or something like that. Yeah, and now they have like 38,000. So basically, this is like the examples of the ascending world and the declining world. Yeah.
And actually, also in terms of also building ships, big ships, warships, they have also like managed to build a half of the ships which have been built since the World War started. So actually, they are leading now also in ship manufacturing. China.
Yeah, exactly. They are building like half of the world's ships, or something like that. Like I think it's like 15 times more than the EU. if I remember those stats that I put in some articles correctly. And also there, for example, they want to build like 150 nuclear reactors in 15 years, in the next 15 years. That would be like more than the rest of the world has built in 35 years. Until now, like 30, for 35 years. So so I mean, this is not like to say that China is great or it's evil or anything like that. I mean, it's just like observing that some countries have a capacity to build like even like 1,000 times faster than other countries or the Western countries. They got stifled by the excessive regulation, but it's not just that. I don't know. It's like it's over determined. Like there are many reasons why this is like it is, but it is like it is. You know, it's like some, I don't know, China can maybe build 1,000 times faster than the US, and it's important, you know, because if you the US might be still like quite ahead of China, you know, but this difference, with this difference, they can catch up kind of quickly, like in a couple of years or something. So people need to kind of adjust their expectations or their mental models. Yeah, because we are not used to thinking in these like exponential kind of curves, and of course they don't last forever, but currently this is how it is. You know, they can like use the prefab kind of buildings, and like Balaji uses this example that they snapped together like some prefab construction, and they built like a metro or a subway station like in 9 hours or something, like in one working day.
Wow.
You know, and it takes like, I don't know, a few years in the US. So it's like really, it could be like 1,000x difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, in your article also you talked about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Can you explain Balaji's comparison of those two, fixed mindset to a growth mindset, in relation to technological progress?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's more okay. This concept of fixed mindset versus where growth mindset comes from Carol Dweck. She's like a psychologist in the US. It's like educational psychologist, and it's basically something. But Balaji talks a lot about a very similar metaphor. It's like it's basically if you have like a zero sum versus positive sum thinking. So if you think that the overall pie can grow, and so it's not about just like getting your slice of the cake or of the pie, but it's like you kind of have this kind of feeling like if we all cooperate together somehow, let's say um, if we invest all in one company, or we are shareholders and we share the equity of the company. So if we, let's say, raise the revenue and we manage the company well, then the pie will grow for all of us. You know, it's not just about like, okay, you have like 33.3% of shares and I have, I don't know, just 23, and now I want to like, I don't know, somebody's like, let's say somebody's thinking about cheating the other person of 3% of their share from the company. But if you are all like shareholders and you have equity stakes in, let's say, one company, and you just basically usually your incentives are aligned that you want to grow the pie, so everybody gets more of it, because if the pie grows larger. And growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is something similar, but it's usually like some students or they have like this fixed mindset, meaning like they don't want to be judged if they don't know something, and they want to like kind of always be seen in a good light. So therefore they might even be prone to like cheating, let's say at exams, or like using GPT-3 just a mild plug or hit.
That's a nice one.
here. Yeah, using GPT, I mean chat GPT, just like so, because they're afraid, like if they don't write a nice essay, then they will be judged by the let's say by the teacher or by their parents or something like that. And people who have more of a growth mindset, that they're like, okay, I mean I need I'm not good yet, so the key word is like yet. So I'm not good at this subject yet, or I'm just a beginner now, but I'm not great at this yet, but I will get better at it. While if I practice, let's say 20 hours or 100 hours or something like that. So you know that it's like painful, it takes time, and it's sometimes you feel like you are not progressing or you are going backwards, but over time you build like a real skill. So that's like kind of difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset, and it can be connected with yeah, also with this topic of bright sun and black mirror basically. And it's kind of connected in this topic of inequality being dynamic. So, and also your skills or something, your skill set being dynamic. So now it might feel like, let's say some countries rich and some countries like relatively low income or poor. But let's say this rich country can have like what Balaji calls like civilizational diabetes, meaning like I don't know, people are just like solving these first world problems, and they might get lost in them, for example, like being complacent about street crime, or like homelessness, or drug addiction or something like that. And or they have a lot of people with that are obese and have diabetes, and like I mean real diabetes. So like or they are not able to grow economically, or they're not able to like produce some innovation or sustainable growth, yeah, or something like that. So, and but they can be rich, you know, and then they can be like, I don't know, playing some kind of like just power games and like some kind of cultural wars, this and that. And there could be some like poor country or low income country, but with young population, with like motivated, hardworking young population that can get their act together and like overtake the richer country on various dimensions. So maybe I can just like give like one example. For example, India now is like the third country in the number of unicorns, like tech unicorns, like so the companies that are valued about $1 billion. So India overtook the UK. So the UK was, of course, UK is a smaller country, but it's like one of the richest countries, or was, or something, you know. But India now produces more tech unicorns than the UK, and it's like number 3 after the US and China. So, and for example, Nigeria has their first tech unicorn as well. So something similar is possible also for Kenya. And yeah,
Okay.
so that's just like one example. And Slovakia has no tech unicorn, just like so to provide the example. So, for example, Nigeria on this dimension is better than Slovakia.
Yeah.
And Kenya is better in in the mobile banking, because like my wife still doesn't have the mobile banking. I mean, I'm able to pay with mobile, but maybe for like with Google Pay, like maybe 2 years. I'm paying with Google Pay, or 1 year or something, but you have it since 2007 with M-Pesa, and even without smartphones. So yeah, and without banks and bank cards. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention about inequality. How does Balaji view inequality, and how does this view differ from the traditional perspective? But you have somehow talked about it. But maybe I'll try to ask another question on what role do maybe empty suits and outdated regulation play in hindering technological progress, according to Balaji?
Okay, so empty suits is something that's more like of Taleb's quote for like usually people like some bureaucrats or like middle level managers, even at some companies, or I don't know, it could be like some mm, uh, yeah, finance bankers or whatever. But in this context, it's like some usually some mid level bureaucrats who are like unelected, and so they are and as we discussed before, they are very hard to fire or unfireable, and because they have something like a tenure for life, or it's like very difficult usually when they like put the agency that they are working for, if they put the agency in a bad light, like doing some, I don't know, having some producing some PR disaster, maybe then they can get fired, but usually they can't get fired almost never or something. It would need to be like very serious issue. And they don't have skin in the game, meaning like for example, they can cause some like either some slowdown down in technological progress, or they can let's say refuse to yeah, well, basically they don't have skin in the game, so they don't suffer if the consequences of their actions very often, you know. So like because they, for example, they get paid no matter what, like their agency, what the results it's producing. Like, so for example, if the life expectancy of is falling in the US, like 3 years in a row, if I'm correct, like at least 2 years it was, but if I'm correct, it's like more than 2 years in a row. Then if like some agency, like let's say FDA, is responsible for managing health and food and something, so maybe if they had a skin in the game, that they would need to like their either some people would need to get fired or their salaries get reduced. That's just like an example of like the process that Taleb describes, and he uses the metaphor skin in the game, but it's like about a symmetry of risk sharing, and it's a very old concept dating back to the very first like laws, like Hammurabi laws or something like that. So yeah.
Okay.
So
You also, in your article, also talked about AI and Web3. So how do decentralized AI and Web3 have the potential to disrupt, say, Hollywood and the traditional financing of art?
yeah, this is what we discussed like the other day with you, with that you actually introduced me to. I mean, you told me about Chat GPT, that you are already using it, and I was like, yeah, I was reading about it and stuff, and actually, I still haven't managed to use it because I was a bit busy, but I wanted to use it for like one article, just like to because that article was about decentralized AI. So I wanted to use ChatGPT as an example of centralized AI to produce an article about why a centralized AI is unethical. But I haven't. Yeah, because I had some issues with my mobile phone and stuff, so I had to prioritize those. My mobile phone got broken, so I had to like solve some issues, but I will get back into Chat GPT. But basically, yeah, this is one example of a centralized AI, which is maybe good for producing this kind of text. But another example of like open source AI is this stable diffusion, and you are using it as well, which is called like one example of this stable diffusion is, excuse me, Playground AI.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is just like a example of things to come, you know, like it's just like a spark of the things to come or something. So you could create like many different, you know, like you want, I don't know, you just write like a short prompt, like one sentence that you want, I don't know, a lion standing on a rock, something, and it produces exactly the picture, and you can use various filters. So like, because before you needed like, actually it's quite to write the good prompt, it's not that easy. I mean, that's trivial because there are lots of like kind of technical details that you could add there, but it's something like it's much quicker than coding or graphic design. And imagine that in a couple of months or years or something, we will get this also for like a video, So, and it's actually also people are already experimenting with it, like with video. But imagine you can create like not just like a painting or a photo or something using this playground or this kind of stable diffusion, open source or decentralized AI, but you can create whole movies. And so this will now disrupt the Hollywood and like mainstream media, or how Balaji calls them, downstream media. And why? Because you could create you could create stories like anyone from a laptop could produce a short movie. Maybe it might not be like it might not be like a 2-hour movie, but it could be like a 2-minute or 10-minute or something like that movie. And AI is, I mean, you can use the AI can produce, let's say, the voice for those characters that speak like a British or American accent. Doesn't need to be like Indian, Slovak, or Kenyan accent, but it could be American. The characters can look as you want them to look. They can be Japanese, they can be Kenyan, they can be whatever you want. And why it's important, it's basically to disintermediate the Western Hollywood studios that are actually, or like these kind of industries that are taking a big cut of profits because they control distribution. That's like one reason. And another reason is what Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, if I pronounce it well, the Nigerian writer, talks about in her talk titled "The Danger of a Single Story," and it's basically going back to the bright sun metaphor of it's kind of danger. Then the danger of simplification of a single story is, let's say, if Africans and Africa is depicted in like the Western movies always as just like some place of a catastrophe, a poor place, or something like that. And this is kind of because it's not true often, and in many cases and in many dimensions, that's bad. And it's just for why it's important to produce different stories. It's just like because everybody, let's say, various tribes, various subcultures and various like nations or countries wants to produce their own stories, and so now they can with using decentralized AI.
So since you talked about Western culture or the West, in what ways is the West becoming technological conservative according to Balaji?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so one example is like this Black Mirror kind of like series. That's the metaphor against the bright sun, which is like the techno optimistic or techno progressive kind of view of the world. And okay, so usually these like tech entrepreneurs, or they call them tech bros, while these are often actually let's say coming from Middle East or from Nigeria or from India, they go to the US, and usually they're immigrants, and they are like just like meritocratic smart people. And these old elites, usually, let's say, typically they're from New York or Washington. They often like inherited their wealth, like for example, like Salzburgers, they inherited the family, passed down through 6 generations, like the newspapers. And the newspaper is like quoted on a stock exchange. I mean, it's a company, they inherited it, but they control a lot of this like narrative because they're quite like still kind of considered as a prestigious media. And usually they consider, let's say, entrepreneurs. Usually people don't know, like that's what Balaji talks often about. Usually people don't know who like these guys, the owner, like the Salzburger, the owner of New York Times is, and it's like some young guy that was selected out of two other or cousins that inherited like the newspaper, and it's like some white white guy from Brooklyn or something, and nobody kind of knows his name, but everybody knows, let's say, who Zuckerberg is, but he is like a son of a dentist. Okay, so let's say maybe his dad wasn't poor because he was a dentist, but he was still just like a working class, like upper working class. I mean upper middle class or still a person. Just growing up not as a son of a millionaire or something like those guys, or like so I mean he dropped out of Harvard and to start Facebook, and he was working since he was like 19 on Facebook, and he's still like a CEO of Facebook, and usually he gets loads of like bad reputation and like bad media coverage from like these corporate journals, and the issue is that they're often like a competition for the same advertising money than the Facebook is getting. So it's kind of like usually they are I mean exaggerating some issues with the social media. Often there are of course lots of problems. I'm not saying like everything is great there, but usually it's kind of there is this disconnect, or it's not equal. How they treat their guys, like SBF. We discussed about Sam Bankman-Fried. So they some of their their elites or people who belong to their kind of class, they treat like almost like heroes, even when they turn out to be villains. But the other people like Zach, or let's say some immigrants or immigrants, like even like Elon Musk, he's South African. They treat with disrespect and with kind of envy, and usually they call them like tech bros, and so that's like one example, but there might be like many of them, and Balaji provides lots of them.
In your article, you say talk about netocrats. So who are the netocrats mentioned by Balaji, and how do they differ from the old East Coast elites? And maybe the second question I could add on top of that, what role do also young immigrant founders play in the rise of the netocrats?
Okay, so the netocrats is like what we discussed with Alexander Bard. So I used it like on your podcast like the other day. So I just used the term netocrat. I think it's from the Wired magazine's co-founder. The guy's called Kelly, if I'm correct, Stephen Kelly, but Kevin Kelly, probably Kevin. Sorry, Kevin Kelly. I think it's either coined by him or but heavily used by Alexander Bard, and he even wrote like a book titled Netocracy. Probably it had more titles, but the Netocracy. So it's either Alexander Bard or this guy called Kelly who coined the term, but anyhow, it's like it's been 20 years ago since Alexander Bard wrote this book, Netocracy, and he kind of he sees or imagines or envision, he sees like people like back then, like Sergey Brin and Larry Page, or now like Elon Musk probably could be like. So basically, it's like some new kind of like class of people who are much more like mobile, who rose with technology, who are like digital nomads, or like founders of companies, like or of these tech startups, or some kind of like media influencers, like maybe people you see like on Instagram, like I don't know, being in Dubai or something like that. So it's like it's like a word connecting aristocrats with like a network, so it's like netocrats, so it's like people who rose with the internet, and like as we discussed with Alexander Bard on your podcast before, yeah, it's like a new kind of internet brought a new paradigm, and it will and that will change like culture, media, politics, and many other things. So a netocrat is like because usually it's not like it's like elites versus the masses, but there are elites, there are counter elites, and then there are masses. So, and like these are like the new elites, let's say, like Elon Musk. It's clearly different from A.G. Salzberg. I think his name is, like, let's say, the heir of New York Times. It's just a different character, It's like that's the difference between like born rich and built rich, kind of, So yeah.
Mm-hmm. As we wind up this conversation, how has Africa's adoption of technology such as mobile phones and e-commerce surpassed that of Western countries?
Okay, so how does, just to repeat, like how does the African
how does the adoption of technology such as mobile phones and
surpass
the
or
e-commerce? Yeah.
So that's a good good question. So one thing that is there is this concept of leapfrogging. So let's say there were not so many landlines, like telephone landlines in Africa prior to mobile phones, but then many Africans experiencing like their first phone being a mobile phone. And the same thing is like their first, like, let's say, banking was the mobile banking of like M-Pesa. Like many people didn't have like a debit cards, credit cards, or like bank accounts or something like that. But in a way, I mean, it's more like digitally native or something. I mean, why do you need this plastic card when you can just use a mobile phone, and you can abstract it, and you don't need to have a bank for many things. So for some things you need one, but it's also like this maybe wouldn't be possible in Western countries, because banks were already too big there, and they had like these oligopolies or monopolies, and this kind of there was this regulatory capture or something that was like not allowing, let's say, mobile phone operators to become de facto banks or something like that. So, but in Kenya it was still possible, because there were loads of people were still unbanked, and so the mobile phone operators could come in and provide services like M-Pesa and kind of like so this is like one example how Africans leapfrogged the Western technologies, and these examples are like this is just like one example. There might be more, and something similar might happen in like with e-commerce or Web3 or crypto in near future. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Nigerians or Kenyans like leapfrogging some Western countries, like with services based on Web3. Yeah.
Jakub Simek, thank you once again for your time at Mtambo's desk.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. It's always a pleasure. Enjoy. Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Merry
Enjoy
Christmas
the rest
to
of the year.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed listening to Mtambo's Desk podcast, please subscribe, give this episode a thumbs up, and be sure to come back next week for another episode. Until then, this is Duke Mtambo, and don't forget to do good always.